everybody, my name is Connor. I'm an English teacher and a state exam corrector. In this video, we'll be looking at a sample debate speech that was written in response to a question that came up in the composition section of the 2016 paper. It would be a great idea if you could read the sample answer first before watching this video. By doing this, you'll get a flavour of the student's writing and you'll also become more familiar with some of the main points that will come up in the speech. Having watched the video, then it would be a great idea for you to look at the annotated PDF version of the sample answer. This will give you even more information and tips on the essay which won't have been covered in the video. So before we get into the sample answer itself, let's take a quick look at the question. So the question reads, write a speech for a class debate for or against the motion young people should travel to see the world before joining the workforce or furthering their education. So the first thing to recognise in this question is that you are being asked to write a debate speech and you'll be expected to follow the appropriate conventions that are associated with the debate speech. The next thing then to consider is the fact that you have to establish whether you are for or against the motion that young people should travel to see the world before joining the workforce or furthering their education. Okay, so now that we've become familiar with the question and we know what to do, let's take a quick look at the marking scheme. So the marking scheme outlines that the corrector is to reward a clearly established register. It also wants students to deliver a coherent and convincing speech, and it also wants students to employ both argumentative and persuasive language. So in order to satisfy the marking scheme, students should really aim to use a consistent and appropriate register, a coherent and convincing argument, and employ the correct language genre. These elements then from the marking scheme will be at the forefront of the corrector's mind when they're making a judgment on your standard of work. Okay, so we've had a look at the question and we understand what we need to do. We've had a brief look at the marking scheme, so let's jump straight into the sample answer itself. The first aspect of the sample answer that we look at in this video is the introduction. So what I really liked about this student's introduction is the fact that they introduce themselves and the debate's motion straight away. This student also gives his audience an immediate insight into the fact that he thinks that students should not travel and see the world before joining the workforce or furthering their education. I also really liked how the student alludes to a John Denver song within this intro. This quote may resonate with some members of the audience and will in turn enhance the student's audience engagement levels. I also really liked how this student showcased a wide range of vocab as well. Words such as erroneous, misconstrued and imprudent show me, the corrector, that this student has a superior command of the English language, which will in turn boost his language mark in the PCLM marking template. Yeah, overall I thought that this intro was perfect. It was perfectly concise and it was straight to the point and provided me with an overview of the angle that this student's speech will take in relation to the motion. So now that we've had a look at the intro, we're going to have a look at this student's second main body paragraph. Again, this student alludes to a quote, this time from Thomas Edison. Allusions such as these are very effective when not only heightening your audience's interest in your speech, but also when it comes to helping them resonate with your individual points. I was also impressed with how this student consistently employed the collective pronoun we. So phrases such as we are more advanced and we are more conscious allow him to position himself as one of the audience, and I think that this can be a very convincing and persuasive technique when it comes to trying to win over your audience. One of the most impressive aspects of this paragraph for me was the fact that the student mentions the opposing side's argument within his speech. He says, my opposition today detests the idea of becoming a cog in the wheel. So by preempting the opposition's points, this student can even more effectively refute their points and may be able to encourage his audience to think in a certain way before the opposition even get a chance to deliver their side of the argument. So I think understanding the opposition's arguments and discussing it in your speech can prove to be a very powerful persuasive tool if executed correctly. This student very effectively uses a persuasive writing technique known as the rule of three. It's said that by reinforcing a point or phrase 3 times, a person can more easily convince an audience to believe in what they are saying. An example of when the student does this and uses the rule of 3 to great effect in this paragraph would be when he says the opposition is afraid of going to college or joining the workforce. They are afraid of their own potential or lack thereof, and when he says they are fundamentally running away from their problems, albeit in an expensive fashion. This sequence of sentences proves to be very convincing and will be sure to not only persuade your audience but will also impress any corrector. One piece of advice I would give to this student would be to avoid repeating words within the same paragraph. Remember, the composition section of the paper is a chance for you to show variety in your range of vocab, so you should really try and avoid recycling words such as fundamentally, like this student did here. The last aspect of the sample answer we'll take a look at is the student's third main body paragraph. I loved how this student consciously chose particular words in order to persuade and convince their audience to believe in what they were saying in their speech. So words such as victim and extortionate have particular negative connotations, which may encourage an audience to feel a sense of unease or discomfort as they listen to your speech. I think as well phrases such as no-brainer and naivety can also prove to question the audience's common sense and can help you align their trail of thought with what it is that you're saying in your speech. I really liked how this student again displays their ability to use task-appropriate literary devices within their speech. So So through rhetorical questions, this student firstly shows an awareness of their audience and secondly poses a serious question to them in relation to whether or not they feel as though travelling around naively is more worthwhile in comparison to working or studying. So rhetorical questions get your audience thinking, and you can then manipulate the direction this trail of thought takes with carefully chosen literary techniques such as rhetorical questions. I was also really impressed with this student's logical and coherent tone, which was evident throughout their speech. This student established their register at the beginning, and I feel as though it remained consistent throughout. A piece of advice I would give to the student in relation to enhancing this paragraph would be to include an anecdote to strengthen their argument. I also think that the student could have provided a statistic to even further support some of the points that they were conveying within this paragraph. So now that we've looked at a few different sections of the sample answer, I just want to quickly reinforce some of the video's take-home points. So overall, I was very impressed with this debate speech. I think what worked well was the fact that the student established and maintained a coherent and consistent register throughout the speech. The student presented, as I said, a coherent and convincing speech, which was helped by carefully chosen and effectively executed literary techniques. I was also impressed with how the student employed the appropriate language genre throughout their speech, and I love the fact that at times they showcased their wide range of vocab. Some advice I would give to the student to improve this piece of writing would be to try and avoid repeating some words. I also think that this speech would have benefited from more anecdotes, and I think that a statistic would have even further strengthened this student's argument. So hopefully some of the content in this video has helped you in some way. Make sure to check out the annotated PDF version of the sample answer for even more info that wasn't covered in this video. Thanks for watching, and chat again soon.